Spirit Bible study, where we got to know them, I get a little bit over about a 6-week period of time. Little did we know at the time, though, that, well, my wife and I, we believe that God put certain people in our lives for a reason. And at the time, we really didn't know how they were going to have, what kind of an impact they were going to have on our lives. Long story short, they were able to act as an instrumental part in our daughter's and our son-in-law's marriage. And so what we'd like to do now is read their testimony. They live out of town, but my wife will read it. Thank you.
Thank you. Show my age here, classes. My husband Jonathan and I grew up in a traditional Catholic household, surrounded by the Catholic Church and its teachings. We married young, high school sweethearts, and thought we could take on the world. At the young age of just 21, Jonathan joined the Air Force. We married and were expecting our first of 3 children. During all the exciting things in our young lives, we had failed to do one very important thing, unaware that we were even leaving this important thing out. We were setting ourselves up for failure. We had not centered our marriage and lives around God. As our lives progressed and the Air Force moved us around, our marriage became less and less of what God intended it to be. As our 10-year anniversary approached last year, Jonathan was deployed and I moved back home to San Antonio with our 3 children. Our plans were to finalize our divorce and upon his return. We thought, like so many couples whose marriages are in trouble, that there was just no way back from a very, very hard time. After all, hadn't we hurt each other enough? And we weren't the only ones hurting. Our families were devastated as well, but most of them accepted getting the divorce, as we did, all but one couple. When I broke the news to my dad, he not only would not give me any assistance, he insisted that even with Jonathan being on the other side of the world, that we give counseling a chance. He swore to me that he knew these amazing people who could make a difference in our life, and were dedicated to saving marriages. At this point, I was skeptical, to say the least, and in my mind, my marriage was done. There was too much hurt, too much anger, too much mistrust, and I was emotionally exhausted to even try to save the marriage. I had convinced myself that sometimes love just wasn't enough, so I continued to ignore my dad, chalking it up to he just doesn't know the entire story, and I figured he would come to terms with it. Around the time of Jonathan's return from his deployment, and when he finally came back, he started to have second thoughts about whether or not we should go through the divorce. It was then that he went to visit my dad and stepmom, and that's when they convinced him that we really needed to see this amazing couple that they kept referring to, at least just one time. I agreed when Jonathan asked me, thinking it would be pointless. After all, what could this couple do in one session to fix years of hurt? But I called and made an appointment with the Alexanders. It just so happened that on the day that we were scheduled to meet, I was feeling terrible, to the point I wasn't sure if I could physically make the appointment. 4 months prior to my husband's return from his deployment, I had started to feel really bad, and after a litany of tests, I was diagnosed with thyroid cancer. So the combination of the meds and the disease itself was debilitating. However, though I was feeling bad and saw no point of counseling, I went to the meeting. We arrived to the appointment and met with Greg. And after our first meeting, any preconceived judgments on my part were completely eliminated. Regardless of how bad I was feeling physically, I felt I left there feeling good and hope. I left there feeling good and with hope. Two feelings that I had not experienced in a very long time. I was completely taken back at how simple what Greg was proposing we do to get our marriage back actually was. The more Jonathan and I talked and started praying together, the more we realized it was just that simple. What Greg and Julie had shown us in such a short amount of time was easy. Why hadn't we seen it before? All things that are of God are simple and pure. What we had been doing for so long was contaminating our marriage with so many things that were not of God. What the Alexanders taught us, and we continue to practice every day, is this: you keep God first in your marriage and each other second. We now understand the covenant of marriage. It is not a promise or a contract or an agreement, nor is it anything temporary. It is a covenant, and covenants are not to be broken. In today's society, where divorce is the easy answer in common practice, we seem to have lost the understanding of the seriousness of marriage. When things get tough, that's the time to cling to God, the Word, and each other. It's not time to bail. We must learn to submit to each other. When Greg first mentioned this in one of our sessions, I thought, oh boy, here we go. As I continued to listen, I began to understand that submission is not meant for bad. It's actually meant to give us more freedom. Do it anyway. There are lots of things Jonathan and I did not want to do. And even though we entered into our marriage claiming unconditional love, our actions reflected a very conditional basis. We now cover each other in prayer. We pray for each other every single day. No excuses, ever. This is one of the first assignments Greg gave to us. Jonathan and I have never prayed much unless we were in some kind of trouble or in church, and that usually meant Christmas and Easter. Greg instilled in us that we first learned to pray together aloud, which was very foreign to us, and what was even more unfamiliar was hearing each other pray for the other. We also learned to thank God for all the blessings He has bestowed upon us every day, and how to express our gratitude for one another in prayer. Once we learned to do this together, we've been able to incorporate prayer with our children on a daily basis. The Alexanders have taught us so much more than we could have ever imagined. We have truly been blessed by having them in our lives, and I thank God every day that my heart was softened to listen to God's calling. I'm even more thankful for my wonderful dad and stepmom for never allowing us to give up, for supporting us, and for the immense blessings of having the Alexanders to lead the way. We are now more in love. We are now more in love with each other than we ever thought possible. Thank you, Greg and Jill. I would like to add that when we open up our hearts to God, He allows miracles and healing in so many ways. And I'm happy to inform you that Christina is on the road to remission from her cancer. This